We're missing a friend today, if you haven't noticed, and that is our nice little plant. It has a name, I just forget what it is. It's not our name to give, it's the place we come to. So we apologize for 2 episodes that don't have our lovely plant. It was just mismanaging on my part, forgot to grab it. And welcome back to Young and Excellent. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the goodies. But we dive into youth stories in Sarnia-Lambton. I guess not just youth, just young people in general. If you think you're young and excellent, come share your story with us. We'd love to hear it, and we love to dive into all the adventures. So yeah, thank you so much for coming back. And thank you to the Sarnia Journal for supporting us, publishing us, and sponsoring us. We greatly appreciate them recognizing the hard work we do, and you should recognize their hard work as well. So subscribe to their emails because their daily email blasts really are incredible. Keep me in the know. You want to be in the know. Yeah. Today we are joined by Kendel, who is an entrepreneur, a former student athlete, and just a fantastic human. Her business, Growth Mindset Co., has done incredible work in our community, and I cannot wait for all of you to listen, hear, and enjoy this episode. So have fun. On the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So let's start with an easy question. How was your day?
Today, I'm not gonna lie. It's funny because I was thinking about coming because I'm coming to the Young and Excellent show that I wasn't feeling like super excellent today.
Oh, you know what? That's super fair. There's some days that you feel it. There's some days you don't. Exactly. But why didn't you feel that today?
Well, I think I was just like fighting to like enter the work week a little bit. Like I, could have used another weekend day. But
oh yeah, I feel like that all the time whenever the clocks, like we lose an hour.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That was this weekend, and oh my gosh, it takes me like 2 months to get adjusted.
Yeah.
So for folks who are watching, listening now, this was the Monday after the time change.
Yeah.
It's a rough one.
Yeah.
That Monday, so I get that because I felt like that today. We had a training at work, and I was really excited about it, but like my body just felt so disconnected, and I was like, what the heck? I hate that feeling.
Yeah, and I just think that coupled with just. My husband and I went to Detroit this weekend, and I'm just feeling a little out of my routine. You know, we like totally vegged out all day yesterday, which is great, but then it makes it sometimes harder to come back to a routine. So,
yeah, I get that motivation back up.
Exactly.
Because, usually on Sunday you can do some chores to help yourself feel productive or whatever, but if you veg out, I love vegging out on a Sunday. Yeah,
it was lovely. We had a full-on stop at the bulk barn. Like it was a full committed day of vegging.
That sounds amazing, especially a bulk barn run.
Yeah.
Bulk barn runs hit different. They're just so nice. Yeah. What did you do in Detroit?
It was a friend's birthday. So my husband is one of the co-owners at Mods Variety in Sarnia, and one of the owners had a birthday recently, and so we went to a Pistons game, and then there was a DJ playing. I'm not a big music person, so I can't even.
Okay.
Austin Mills, actually.
Austin Mills.
Yeah, that's who it was.
Mills.
Yeah.
Oh,
cool. So we did that, and then stayed the night at a friend's Airbnb, and then came back Sunday.
That is so cool. So your did you say fiance or partner?
My husband.
Okay, I thought you said husband, but I was like, some people will get so offended if I misinterpret that because I'm like, he's not my husband yet.
Oh,
so I
yeah,
just wanted
no
to
problem.
make sure I clarified.
Yeah, you could have called him anything. I was like, sure.
So for you and your husband, you're both entrepreneurs then?
A little bit, yeah. So we're both wearers of many hats, I would put it that way. So he is involved in lots of different community things. He helped write like the climate action plan for the community.
Oh, sweet.
So his full-time job is actually as an arborist for the city of Sarnia.
Oh, wow, an arborist.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, really cool. And he's actually going to start going back to do his master's here in the spring to do his master's in conservation leadership. He has a huge passion for so cool. That whole side of things, environmental, and just wildlife in general. He's a leader with Quest Nature Tours. He went to Madagascar in November and led a tour. He knows birds by their sounds. He's just a whole. He's a whole thing.
And he found his niche. That is so cool. So for you, obviously, you have your company, Growth Mindset Co. Yeah. Tell me more about that. What inspired you to start that?
Gosh, lots of things inspired me to start it. To be honest, I thought about starting a company right fresh out of doing my master's program. I knew I had a passion for wellness, and I had actually developed a business plan, and I was starting to bring it to investors, but I wasn't done playing basketball yet. And So it just kind of got into a stalemate, and I went overseas to finish my basketball career. And then when I came home, I just was like, I need to start working, kind of got into the workforce. I ended up doing some one-on-one training for about a year. And then I was at the college for 6 years before I actually started my company.
Wow.
So
What were you doing at the college?
I was teaching.
Oh,
yeah.
That is so cool. So with your master's degree, you were able to teach there?
Yeah.
Is that, okay. So what's your master's in?
So my master's is in the health sciences.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I had a focus in biomechanics in my master's program that I did in the motion analysis lab. But really, my big passion during my master's, I paid for my master's by being a graduate assistant with the faculty and staff wellness program.
Oh, cool.
And so I ran the whole program, and I just knew like I needed to do that, or at least be involved in community wellness on some level in my profession.
So what parts of your business were heavily influenced by your master's then?
I would say there's like large chunks of it, because it's everything I do, every contract I sign has like a wellness focus. So for instance, I work with the Blue Water Cycling organization. So I help run all of their events and programs.
Oh, cool.
And I got into doing that because my first kind of job with them was creating their youth spokes program, which is a completely free cycling program for youth. And it runs in the summers, and for 10 weeks, we provide everything that youth might need, bicycles, helmets.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's getting people moving. Like the mission statement of the Blue Water Cycling Organization is to create a more active, healthy, and connected community. And so obviously very in line with wellness. And so when Youth Spokes went so well, it kind of brought me on to help run all of their events and programs. So
oh, that is amazing.
Yeah.
So you've been able to like kind of figure out your passion, then also bring it to like youth services, which not a lot of people get to say they get to do, which is really, really interesting and cool.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I work with the cycling organization, and then my other contract is I'm contracted by the hospital to provide a service within the Youth Wellness Hub in our community.
Oh, sweet. I know Waihu.
Yeah.
I love Waihu. So yeah, I work at Rebound full time, as you know. And I love the building. It is so beautiful. And I don't think a lot of folks know what Waihu is and what they do. Would you mind just breaking that down for folks listening and watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is 22, I believe, Waihus in Ontario. And so it was a big deal for us to bring one here to Sarnia. And the Michael Weir Foundation was a huge proponent of that, raised a lot of money for it. And why it's so important is because it helps to overcome a few major barriers that youth face when accessing services. So one of them is that they often need to see multiple services, and it's difficult to get into all of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So youth might need support with like family support, housing support, maybe addiction support, or maybe they just need to see a psychotherapist, maybe they need help with their resume or cover letter, but they often need to see more than one thing.
Yeah.
And because the wait times could be extensive, Waihu is meant to bring all these services together in one place so that you can kind of in a one-stop shop see what you need to see within 72 hours.
It's a great wraparound service because the hub basically is like that for Rebound. We don't offer psychotherapy, but we do offer that wraparound service as well, like just across the parking lot. And so I loved when you guys came in and we got to partner with you because it is so fantastic that we have 2 spaces in Sarnia doing it now, as opposed to just one or not at all. Like I think there are so many youth who need it, and it's very evident seeing the numbers that they need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something I'm really big on is collaboration. So there's a lot of really wonderful organizations doing a lot of wonderful work, and the more that we can bring them together, I think it streamlines the care that we offer to youth.
I completely agree with that. I used to be somebody when I was like in high school and in my early like adulthood, like that I was really like against collaboration if it wasn't on my terms.
Right.
So if I felt threatened or if I felt like, oh, this person's doing the same thing as me, it would be, you're my enemy. As opposed to let's bring our services together and see what we can offer collaboratively. Yeah. And so that is so cool. You can do that at Waihu now.
Yeah. So what's really cool, so my company was essentially contracted to create a whole new branch within Waihu. So at least for the Sarnia-Lambton site. So we're piloting an activity center as part of the care model. So any youth in our community can come and utilize the activity center at any point. They don't have to be seeing any other service in Waihu. Which is
fantastic.
Yeah, and we know that movement has a really positive effect on mental health. And so and we've known that for a long time.
Yes, yeah, I'm a big proponent of that.
Right.
I have really high anxiety, and I notice when I don't work out how out of control I kind of become.
Right.
Not to say that I'm a monster or anything like that, but just that like my anxiety level will get way higher, and it's almost unmanageable if I don't move my body in some way.
Yeah, I'm honestly the exact same way. You know, playing basketball, I didn't necessarily realize that because I was so active all the time.
It was your
but
routine.
Right, but when I finished playing, I didn't realize how important it was for balance, and I really kind of had to find my way back to movement in a way that fit into my life kind of post-athletics.
Yeah. And now you're bringing it to youth.
Yes.
I think that's so beautiful because you're setting up future generations with not only knowledge, but just the resources to be able to do it. I think a lot of folks get really uncomfortable with the idea of teaching wellness and like, you know, movement to youth because we're teaching unrealistic body standards of some kind. And I completely empathize with that. But at the same time, I think every young person deserves the tools and resources. But when they do become an adult, they get to choose what they wish. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and it's really important actually for me to change the narrative a bit with this activity center. The fitness industry doesn't work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, there are a group of people that it does work for, and that's wonderful.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's so performance based, right? Like often, how much can you lift? How high can you jump?
Yeah.
You know, how many reps can you do? How long can you hold something?
Oh, yeah.
It's always about performance. How much weight can you lose? You know, and
that's a big one.
Exactly. Or gain, and you know, and I just don't think that wellness necessarily is super tied to those metrics. You know, people can be really, really fit, but not necessarily well.
Yeah, 110%. I think I was listening to a podcast on my fitness journey. It was like the wellness podcast. It was like this couple, they talk about it, and they had someone on that was a fitness instructor, and she was getting paid like thousands of dollars to do those home videos and all this kind of stuff. And she said that she didn't realize how unhealthy she was because she looked great in the mirror. The scale said great things, but she was drinking a Diet Coke for breakfast, having maybe a salad at lunch, and then drinking Diet Coke for dinner. And she said her brain capability and her capacity was nothing. Like she had nothing to give. Yeah. And I think that what you said is completely accurate. And I don't think the scale reflects that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, even like there's a number of things that make me laugh a little bit. Like when you walk into a gym, it's covered in mirrors, which automatically say the way you look really matters, right?
Oh man, that's a good point.
Yeah, and or if you look at any of the advertisements for gyms, they're all in capital letters. And you think about if someone you knew sent you a text in capital letters, you would feel like they're yelling at you.
Yeah, it's aggressive.
So all like almost every gym advertisement I see is like all in capital letters. They're always yelling, and it's just like, you know, I think we can do something different that actually speaks to a large chunk of the population that's being missed. And so at We're Active, and we're called We're Active because we're funded by the Mike Weir Foundation.
So I've seen you guys. You guys are across the street from
Exactly. So we're actually part of it, but just across the street. And so we ask two questions when people arrive and when they leave. And it's, how would you rate your overall physical health? How would you rate your overall mental health? And we ask the same questions when you leave. And the only thing is that we hope that it doesn't become any worse while you're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So at minimum, no effect, but obviously we're just hoping that it improves, right? And acutely within a session, but then over time, as you come in, even the number that you come in with is gradually higher. Not every day, but you know, trending that way.
Which is nice, and it's good to keep that data too, because again, if like you have funders or anything like that, they do want to report back. So that's like, and it's also good for the youth to see how far they've come, even if it's just mentally or physically, whatever their goals are. So you mentioned high performance, and I totally agree with that point. But you were a basketball player.
I know.
So that's a very interesting thing. Did you learn the stress of high performance because of your basketball career?
Absolutely.
Oh my God, dive into that.
I mean, my basketball career, I feel like I'm still uncovering it in therapy. But
Which is fair. I like a lot of student athletes because I worked for varsity athletics at York. But I would assist the varsity like teams with like their marketing needs and all that kind of fun stuff. But I saw it. I saw the pressure. I saw the stress, and I saw a lot of tears and a lot of high emotions. How did you cope with that?
Oh gosh. Well, I was very, very fortunate to be in spaces that had a tremendous amount of funding. And so I had a lot of supports around me. I had, you know, in university alone, I had an academic advisor, a strength coach, a sports psychologist, 4 or 5 coaches. I had admin staff. There's lots of people, not to mention my team, who was wonderful, around for support, but they all are still in a performance space. So no matter what you do, it's hard to kind of get away from that in that space. And, you know, it was kind of a double-edged sword because I can really trace, you know, most of who I am in the world and the skills that I've built back to my basketball career. And I'm very, very grateful for it. But two things can be true at once, right?
Absolutely.
It can be the biggest gift, one of my biggest gifts of my entire life, but also one of the biggest challenges that I faced. And, you know, when you look back at it, I really realized like, wow, I wasn't necessarily a really well placed to exist. And I know all that pressure to perform. You know, I did a lot of things for a long time because it felt like what I should do. I wasn't necessarily honoring, you know, how I feel today and what I should do about that, right? Like when I wake up, it's like I have to train. That's what has to happen today. I have to do this. These are the numbers I need to hit. When I didn't hit that, you know, yes, okay, I can evaluate how's my recovery, how's my nutrition, all those little factors, but I wouldn't often look at like how's my mental health. And I probably didn't really look at it till post my athletic career. And I started to have to kind of uncover some of the things and reevaluate how I found worth in the world, really. Because all of my worth was tied to accomplishment when I finished my basketball career. And then you take my basketball career away, and I just really wasn't sure where my worth was anymore.
I think a lot of young people can relate to that because I did theater in university, and I even feel like that when like my opportunities were taken away during COVID. That's how I felt. It kind of feels hopeless. So for you going into growth mindset, was that like a huge influence and inspiration for you? Just like that kind of shift that happened after basketball?
Yeah, I think, well, the pandemic allowed me to put a bit of a pause in my life because I kind of shifted the accomplishment mindset into my career right away. So I was working at one point, I think like 90 hours a week at the college. I had 6 separate contracts happening at once at the college. I wasn't full-time. I was working more than full-time hours often, but I wasn't full-time. I was just contract working. And so I was just wildly busy. I didn't really have any come up for air moments, right? It was the pandemic that was like, I wasn't allowed to do half the things I was doing on my contracts. And so it was really like the step back of like, okay, like I'm not doing well. And how do I rebuild my life now, you know, as we emerge from COVID in a way that actually is good for me, right? It wasn't until actually, so I finished my basketball career in 2015. It wasn't until the pandemic in 2020 where I actually sought out therapy. And so, and it was because I was like faced with, I could distract myself with all the things to do anymore,
absolutely.
right?
Especially in a varsity career, it's go, go, go. You have no time to think. So I would say it was, you know, in the pandemic where I was really faced with, okay, I need some help here to like rediscover, you know, how to feel valuable in the world again. And and so that was, I would say it definitely informs everything I do with my company. You know, when I was first retired from playing basketball, I was in a more one-on-one setting with people training. I really loved it. I love working with people, but I just wasn't it didn't feel like it was making a big enough impact fast enough. Right? I get what you're saying.
Because I really had taken those things. I learned from the fitness industry that it didn't serve a lot of people. Like, you know, by the time I started training people full time, I had been, you know, working for 5 years in the industry. And the first thing everyone would say to me when they came to work with me was, I don't have the willpower to make myself move consistently. And after a while, you're like, this is not an internal personal problem. This is an industry problem.
I totally agree with that.
Like it's not fun.
No,
like
it's
when you
not
walk into a gym, when you walk into a gym, it doesn't look like everyone's having like a lot of fun. But people really believe it's like a them problem. They internalize it as like, I'm not good enough. Like because I can't make myself do this thing that's not any fun. When really there's no other place in your life where you're like, I'm just going to continually make myself do something that's just not fun in any way.
That makes me literally want to walk into a gym and literally hide because so many people are looking at me and I don't like that feeling.
Exactly. And so everything I do now is about bringing down barriers to movement, but also bringing down the pressure for movement to look any certain way. Right? Like at We're Active, if you want to come in and sit in a chair and play Jenga, like great. Like that's activity to us, right?
Exactly.
And anything that's just outside of, you know, being on our devices, being solo, right? Even just being in community can do lots of wonderful things for your mental health.
And it sounds like that's really influencing your business too, just because of the contracts and the projects you're taking on. It seems very community driven. So have you always been a community driven person? I
think I've always been very aware, because of my basketball career, of the importance of, if you're in a place where you're a role model, the importance of modeling positivity for the community. Like I've always been very aware of like kind of my larger impact. And so it is very important to me to make sure that that impact is positive on our community at large. And also because of all the community it takes to create a national team athlete, it's really important for me to pay that forward as well in the community I'm from.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful sentiment. You mentioned value earlier, that you were finding value in all these contracts at Lambton College and all that fun stuff, working 90 hours a week, which is wild. Good for you, but also I'm glad that you stopped doing that.
Me too.
Yeah. But in terms of how you find value, how do you find value now that you've had that pivot moment? How do you find it?
I don't think it's necessarily like a light switch, but like I think I've done a lot of personal work on realizing like I don't need to do or be anything to be valuable in the world, right? I was born valuable.
Retweet on that one. I love that.
Yeah, like I really and you know that's daily work, right? You have to wake up and there's things that help, right? Like you mentioned how it can really affect your anxiety when you're not moving. Like that's the same for me. So you know, moving a little bit can really help and keep myself in that positive frame of mind, feeling like I bring value just because I'm alive. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's definitely daily work, and I wouldn't say that it's something that I feel every day, but it's something I feel a lot more today than I did when I was working those 90 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And being okay with that pendulum swing, that some days you'll wake up and you'll want to do all the things.
Right,
and then one day you won't want to, like vegging out. Like, you know, like it's definitely being comfortable with the ebbs and flows of life. And I feel like when you are in a high achiever, high performance, high success kind of realm, you don't really get that beautiful grace of having that ebb and flow. You just have to be here all the time.
Yeah,
I felt that way, and I was just doing rec sports. So like, like I can't even imagine. But I feel like, again, that sentiment from other young athletes about when it stops and what that does to your brain capacity, what that does to your health, your wellness, all that. What would you say to people who are going through that right now? What would be an advice you'd give for that?
I would say, first of all, just follow your interests, right? Like, we get a lot of praise from people for interesting things. Like, for instance, I have 3 sisters, and I'm the only one that played athletics past high school. And my sisters and I had my education paid for. I was able to travel the world because of basketball.
That's sick,
yeah, incredible. But my sisters would often remind me, like, you know, we're doing really important work here too, right? And we didn't get our education paid for. We don't get to travel the world, but you do because you can throw a ball through a ring. Make it make sense, right? And I was like, well, I can't, but what I can do is recognize that I've been given some privilege and try to pay it forward. And so my sisters have really helped to kind of humble me in that way. And that reminder definitely informs, and it's part of the reason why I really want to work with, you know, and help limit barriers to movement.
Yeah. I love that you said it was a humbling experience for you, because if my sister said that to me, I'd be like, you can go fuck yourself.
Well, at the time, you know, I may have felt that way a little bit, but I think just when you hear that messaging over time, like now I'm just grateful for it.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense, because that's, again, I think as you get older, you look back on things, you're like, if I didn't have that, even if it may have been a negative thing for me to experience, it taught me something. And now I'm a better person for it. And I think that mindset is super important. It seems like that's what you just went through and what you just talked about, which is incredible. In terms of Growth Mindset Co., where can we find you? Like on Instagram or?
So on Instagram, it's the Growth Mindset Company. We also have a Facebook website, growthmindsetco.ca. But I realize I missed the answer to your question on like, what would you say to you?
Oh, yeah.
No,
I just got so right.
No, it's great. Because I was the one that went off on a tangent.
No worries.
And so, follow your interests, because the world praises what the world praises. It doesn't actually mean that that's what's important. What's important is what's important to you. And so, you know, it's definitely served me well in my life to just say, like, when something doesn't work out, it's not like, oh, I'm just not good enough. It's like, oh, that's just not for me. Right.
Absolutely.
And it just treat every day almost like, especially when you're trying new things, like experiments, right? Instead of like, this is the thing that's going to work out. Like, I'm going to try this thing and it may or may not work out. And if it doesn't, great, I've learned something. And if it does, wonderful, I'm going to keep chasing that. And so I think that will really allow you to kind of sit in your value and your identity, right? Instead of like you know, whether it's your parents or, you know, friends or, you know, even just like what society's throwing money at right now, you know, it can make you kind of feel like, oh, that's the only way I can bring value. But just being yourself is really where the sweet spot is. So.
I think that's relatable, even if you're not a young athlete or like, you know, ending your varsity career or anything like that, just because I feel like we all have that narrative in our head. So we learned it some along the way of like either bullying or childhood trauma or like anything like that, where we have to be a certain way to be liked, to be something to bring value. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing is, no, you don't. You get to just be you. And if you go down a path and like, let's say you want to be famous and then 5 years down the road, you're like, I hate this, I'm going to change it. That's okay too.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So for you going into your business now, you told me before we started filming that now you're full time in it.
Yes.
How does that feel?
It feels incredible. It's kind of shocking. You know, when I started it, I definitely wanted to be full time in it. I didn't expect it to happen so fast.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's really impressive.
Well, you know, this is what I would say to people too. One of the reasons why it happened so quickly is because, you know, relationships that have built over a long period of time kind of circled back at just opportune times. So for instance, you know, one of the contracts I had was a meeting that I've secured through a connection that was someone that I trained like the very first year I had come back from playing basketball. Wow. And so, you know, at the time that was 7 years prior, right? And then the other one was actually a connection I had made when I was like in high school. So I was at a basketball camp, and a counselor that, you know, I like really looked up to was kind of like a mentor. Their father was looking for someone to help a female, specifically a female identifying person, to help to run this youth spokes program. And his son said, well, have you thought about Kendel, right? And, you know, I probably hadn't spoken to this person, like maybe they follow each other on Instagram, but I hadn't spoken to them in a very long time. So the number one way I think I've honestly become successful in my business is to just be kind as often as I can in my life, right? Because that's, we know that the number one way people get positions and opportunities is through people they know. Yeah. Oh, right? Networking is a huge thing. Yeah. And people often think, oh, I need to know like these specific business people, but it's not. It's usually just like people in your life that you've come across, you know, because of basketball camps or because, you know, a job you had 7 years ago, right? Oh, absolutely. 100%. Me coming back to Sarnia, that was my whole lifeline. Like I got a job at a scrapyard because of someone I knew from elementary school and high school. And then having this rebound job, even though I'm not specifically trained in marketing, I have experience with it, but because I was a youth here, you know, it gave me that connection to go, you guys know my credibility, you know my integrity, you know who I am. So I would be great. I would be a great fit. I can't speak today. I'm having a hard time. A great fit, you know? And so I definitely agree with that. So through community connections, like what is your best advice to create those community connections for folks listening? I honestly, just in your day-to-day, just try to be as kind and authentic as you can be. Because what you want to be hired for is your authentic self. Yeah. Right? Because that's where your strengths are. And so, yeah, in every interaction, like I'm saying, like when you go to the convenience store and you get a chocolate bar, like be kind to the person at the counter. Like just everyone as often as possible. And, you know, you're going to win some battles and lose some battles depending on where you're at. But like if you're intentional about it, like it's going to pay itself dividends at some point. Absolutely. And if not, like at minimum, you've been really kind in the world, which is great. Not a bad thing. Yeah, that's a great thing. I always say that too. But for you, how important is authenticity to your business then? It sounds like I've heard a very awesome theme about being authentic from you, and I love that. Yeah, it's important. It's super important. I would say that the people I work with, like they know what they get with me, you know what I mean? And that's going to be someone that's like strong-headed and someone that's wildly passionate. I love that. And that's going to bring that to the table. And sometimes that means conflict, which is good in my opinion. I think so too. Conflict can really help you grow. Exactly. If it's constructive conflict, right? Like I'm not like yelling at people. Yeah, like, not being abusive. I'm very professional, right? But I have like strong ideas, and if those ideas aren't going to move forward, I want to know why. Yeah, 100%. I just want to know why, right? And there's a big accountability piece in there too. Exactly. And so I ask a lot of questions, and you know, if you're someone that, you know, doesn't really want to answer a lot of questions and just wants to like continue things to be as they were. It's been successful so far, so you're just going to keep with the status quo. Then I'm not your person, right?
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you need someone that's going to just continue to run your day to day. But my company is called Growth Mindset Co. because I want to work with people that want to grow, that want to learn, that want to be pushed, because I want to be pushed by them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so being authentic is, I think, why I have the contracts I have and why I work in the spaces I do, because there's value in from the people that I work with to have that.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so last question for our interview. If you could give any piece of advice to any of our listeners or watchers at home, what would it be? Oh gosh, I think it would be come up for air. That's gonna be my. That's a good one. That would hit me in the chest a little bit. Yeah, that's nice. Because
we just get so busy in our lives. We get busy in lots of different things, and we don't often come up to reevaluate, to celebrate.
Celebrate's a big one.
Yeah, and so be intentional about coming up for air, because otherwise, you know, it might be 20 years and you look back and you're like, whoa, like me.
Yeah.
You know, am I actually happy? Yeah. Right? Did I actually want to do this thing? And I feel like if I had scheduled some come up for air moments earlier, it might have saved me a little bit of grief. But yeah, I at minimum, I think I would have been more well earlier.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and come up for air can mean a lot of different things. It could be, you know, I have a business coach that I work with, and I have weekly meetings with her just to like reevaluate, okay, what am I doing right now? Does it still make sense? So it could be that type of thing. It could be a coffee date with a friend. It could be a solo workout or run where you just like give yourself time to think. But find a way to like book that time in. Even if it's just like, I'm going to sit and journal, right? Because we need it. We need it to, you know, reevaluate and not get ourselves into places that, you know, we don't necessarily want to be.
Yeah, we got to connect with ourselves too.
Yeah,
I love that thing. And then you're also helping people do that now. And I think that's so beautiful. And that's a full circle kind of moment. Of course, like we said, ebbs and flows. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
and I'm so happy we got to know each other even more now. That's
awesome.
Thanks
a lot.
Yeah, I'll definitely say hi in the community.
Okay, great.
I'm like, hi, we're active. What's going on, guys? But yeah, I always wave because you have Jake working for you.
Yeah.
And I love Jake. He was a student here at one point. And so every single time I'm like, I'm not under the age of 24 anymore, but I'm still going to wave and say hi to you guys.
Yeah. Well, you know, I am a big believer that what we're doing at We Are Active should be available for, not necessarily with We Are Active, but the idea and concept should be something that everyone
it'd be
needs.
really cool to see. Yeah.
So maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Us old dogs can come in. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, have a good time, everybody.